Hello everybody, and welcome to Ancient Architects. Please subscribe now to get the latest ancient history news and independent research from around the world. Whilst I'm taking a deep dive into the Great Pyramid, I've realised that there are still a number of things I haven't yet discussed in any of my videos, and one of which is the pyramid's now lost causeway. In this video, I'll be taking a closer look at the lost causeway, the strong evidence for its relationship with King Khufu, and towards the end of this video, I'll be identifying what I think is a possible entrance into the subterranean passages that were used in Khufu's funeral. Looking at pictures of Giza today, and the Great Pyramid's causeway is non-existent. Khafre's causeway is better preserved, and even though it isn't in the best condition, Menkaura's is traceable across the Giza plateau. So what happened to the causeway of the Great Pyramid? Well, as you saw in my last video, which took a brief look at the canals and ports of Giza, the Great Pyramid causeway went out beyond the high ground of the plateau, into the lowlands of the east, which in times gone by were filled by canals and waterways during the annual inundation. During this time, some think the Khufu Valley Temple was on some sort of island, although we don't know this for sure, as it could well be a man-made construct from the foundations up. Either way, it was certainly on the waterfront in ancient times. The fact is, we don't know a great deal about the causeway, because a huge section of it, the section to the east, as well as the foundations of the Khufu Valley Temple, have now been built over thanks to the modern-day village of Nazlet al-Saman. Unlike that of Khafre and Menkaura, the Great Pyramid causeway was bent, as you can see in this diagram. And this may have been because it was aiming for a specific patch of ground within the lowlands, a place where most believed there was a small port or landing site for boats, as well as the Valley Temple. It was therefore most likely bent due to the local topography and geology. Others say the two straight sections of the causeway pointed towards two separate astronomical phenomena. Others say it is all to do with sacred geometry. In truth, we just don't know, but there was obviously a reason for its shape. Herodotus is one of the few ancient historians to give a brief description of the causeway, writing, "The Egyptians worked by 100,000 men at a time, for each 3 months continually. Of this oppression there passed 10 years whilst the causeway was made, by which they drew the stones which the causeway they built. And it is a work not much less, as it appears to me, than the pyramid. For the length of it is 5 furlongs, and the breadth is 10 fathoms, and the height where it is highest 8 fathoms. And it is made of smooth stone, and with figures carved upon it. 8 fathoms is approximately 48 feet high, which of course is huge. And to be this size at its highest means it must have continued off the edge of the plateau, just as the diagrams show. At this location at the end of the plateau, the topography does drop around 40 to 50 feet. So, we learn from Herodotus that the causeway of the Great Pyramid was 3,051 feet in length, 50 feet wide, and up to 48 feet in height. It was therefore nearly twice as long as the Khafre causeway, which is 1,622 feet in length. The Great Pyramid's causeway was clearly an incredible piece of architecture in its own right. This is one of the very few pictures of the causeway, created by Lepsius in 1843, and there are more blocks at the site in the mid-19th century than there are today. It seems that all of the main damage to the causeway was done in the past 200 years, which is very sad for a structure more than 4,000 years old. The stone was used for modern housing projects. But we do know quite a bit about the causeway thanks to archaeological excavations that have taken place on the Giza plateau in the 19th and 20th centuries, with the brilliant Selim Hassan being a fountain of knowledge on the subject. He excavated the site between 1938 and 1939, and released a brilliant paper titled The Great Pyramid of Khufu in its Mortuary Chapel, which is available online and linked below in the description. The causeway was walled and later roofed, joining the mortuary temple on the eastern side of the pyramid to the Valley Temple located beyond the ridge of the plateau. As stated, the foundations of this Valley Temple are now buried somewhere under the modern village of Nazlet al-Saman, and there are several theories as to its exact location. What we know of the causeway is what experts have found on the plateau, and as you can see, the most westerly section of the causeway runs obliquely southwest. From the top of the plateau, the angle changes slightly to the north, creating the iconic dogleg shape. Near the edge of the plateau, there is a subway which passes under the causeway, cut directly into the bedrock, and it runs north to south. These subways seem to be regular features of causeways, and another is seen on the Causeway Causeway as well as the Wall of the Crow. They basically allowed for people to travel northward and southward across the plateau, without having to make long detours behind the pyramids or in front of the valley temples. From its foundations, the western end of the causeway has been recorded by archaeologists, and as you can see from this diagram, it passes a solar boat pit as well as the famous trial passages, both of which are located on its northern side, and the latter being the subject of a recent video on the Ancient Architects channel. Some blocks of the southern wall of the causeway still remain in place today. Its total width at this point is 9 metres, or 30 feet, half the width quoted by Herodotus, although it does increase by a couple of metres as you go to the northeast. It also may have been wider away from the plateau simply because it was a taller structure, and therefore it may have needed wider foundations. At the end closest to the pyramid, Selim Hassan and his team discovered a number of interesting finds, including beautifully sculpted blocks which would have once adorned the walls of the causeway. These blocks provide evidence that the 4th dynasty funerary monuments of the Giza plateau were indeed decorated, as well as providing clear evidence that King Khufu was associated with the Great Pyramid. Here we can see the lower part of a wing, and the legs of what is likely a hawk, clutching the famous Ankh symbol of life. Another block depicts the upper part of a large figure of King Khufu, who, as you can see, is wearing the red crown of Lower Egypt, and, due to his attire, experts say it is portraying part of the king's ritual visit to Heliopolis. Another block also looks to be showing the large head of Khufu, and he is wearing a strange headdress. Another shows part of his torso, and we also find part of a now destroyed granite statue, as well as broken pharaonic statuettes. Those that don't think there is evidence of Khufu having any relationship with the Great Pyramid often overlook the causeway, but here is a fragment of a mace head inscribed with the Horus name of Khufu, and it was found during the excavations of the causeway. This block from the causeway shows part of 2 scenes of Khufu performing the ceremonies of the Hebsed feast, and it displays these hieroglyphs, which are translated to mean the splendour of Khufu. Experts believe that this literally means the Great Pyramid. The style of stonework mentioned is Old Kingdom, but as noted by Selim Hassan, some blocks do have a distinct Sate period form, and therefore they are examples of much later restoration work. We should note that the Sate kings of the 26th dynasty venerated Khufu and renovated Giza. Another find of great interest is this head of a lion made from brown sandstone, very finely carved and life-size, maybe a very tenuous link to the former appearance of the Sphinx, if of course you believe it was once a lion before having a human face. At the very least, it does show that there was a lion statue outside the Great Pyramid in the Old Kingdom. In recent years, the Khufu Causeway made the headlines when a new section of it was discovered under the village of Nazlat El Saman. A resident of the village was illegally digging beneath his home to a depth of 33 feet, when he discovered a path of huge blocks leading towards the Great Pyramid. These blocks were around 1.5 metres high and 1 metre wide, and although the amateur excavation was illegal, the find was incredible, because in the past 30 years, dozens of scientific surveys have been undertaken to find the extent of the causeway, and none of them were successful. So, that gives us some background about the Great Pyramid Causeway, and it gives us more evidence of Khufu's connection to the enigmatic structure. Following on from my last few videos regarding the funeral of Khufu, and we have to pay attention to the boat pit located just north of the causeway, and also close to the trial passages. This boat pit is one of 3 on the east side of the pyramid, and when excavated it was found to be empty, apart from a few pieces of gilded wood and also some decayed rope. This does suggest that at one time it did contain a wooden boat. There are also 2 more boat pits to the south of the Great Pyramid. Flinders Petrie and also George Reisner excavated those on the eastern flank of the pyramid, and due to the finds and the shape of the pit, the boat that was buried just off the causeway is undoubtedly classed as a solar boat. It would have measured 43 metres long, 5 metres wide and 7 metres deep. The pit is particularly strange because unlike other boat pits, experts found that it had steps that led down into it. In my opinion, there is a good reason for these steps. It is possible that Khufu's body was taken from the mortuary temple and down into the ceremonial boat, and then the boat, together with the remains of the king, was taken out of the pit and up the stairs, carried along the causeway to the port at the Khufu Valley Temple. From there it sailed northward a short distance before turning left into the plateau, because I think there was a channel into the now lost subterranean burial chamber as noted by Herodotus. On his burial, the boat was taken back to its pit, disassembled and buried accordingly. But where is this cutting? Where was the entrance in the bedrock that led to Khufu's burial chamber? Before making this video, I looked at detailed aerial photographs of the area around the causeway and around the edge of the plateau, looking closely for any strange anomalies that could have been an entrance into the tomb of Khufu. And in doing so, this specific feature stood out. Here we see what could be a large platform, which does seem to fill a depression in the bedrock. I believe that Selim Hassan does refer to it in his report, saying there is a considerable area of the surface which is composed of huge limestone blocks. These blocks run northeast, and descend in courses to a little less than half the height of the plateau. Hassan speculates that these blocks may have been to merely fill in a deep crevice in the plateau, which would have been extremely huge, and surely it would have been more cost effective and less labour intensive to fill it up with rubble than carefully laid blocks. The blocks indicate a purpose. Ideas for what this could have been include an old construction ramp that was demolished when the pyramid was complete, or maybe it was part of an earlier project for a causeway. What is clear to me from looking at the depression it sits inside is that the bedrock looks to have been cut away and this feature was added later. Also, are we actually seeing it in its entirety, or does it continue all the way down to the base of the cliff? This section looks as though the masonry may go deeper into the bedrock. Also, you can see a number of large loose blocks here as well. You can also see the natural limestone bedding plane marked here, but the natural rock seems to be bending into the plateau, implying there is a cave or opening. Is this the entrance into the secret subterranean chambers of the Great Pyramid, for the ceremonial boat carrying the remains of King Khufu? And is this a fill of large blocks of stone to stop tomb robbers after the king was laid to rest? It's something I'll look into more in future videos, but this is certainly curious, and it is another unexplained feature of the Great Pyramid. Its orientation doesn't lead directly beneath the Great Pyramid, but if it is hiding another water channel, there could well be further bends inside the bedrock. Maybe it heads towards the causeway and then bends to the west, and so there is a subterranean causeway directly beneath the one above ground. Back to the Great Pyramid Causeway, and most think it had at least 2 functions, for moving building stone during construction, and also for the funerary procession of the king. One thing is for sure, this is certainly an important piece of the puzzle. Whether you believe that Khufu built the pyramid or not, he was certainly strongly associated with the structure, and as we have seen, his face and name are also carved into the causeway a number of times. In looking in detail at the Giza plateau and the Great Pyramid, there is a clear sequence of events emerging, an order of building that should tell us something about the origins of Giza, something I'll be working on for a future video. But whilst making this video, I also found this photograph. which shows the irregular interlocking stone walls similar to those found in Peru, and these are found just a stone's throw away from the Great Pyramid of Egypt in the Western Cemetery. These walls, as well as this feature that I've highlighted on the edge of the plateau, will both be the subjects of future videos. Thank you very much for watching this episode of Ancient Architects. If you enjoyed the video, please subscribe to the channel, please like the video, and please leave a comment below. Thank you very much.